is anything but conventional.
Hey everybody, welcome back to MECH. You know me, I'm Wads, and I thought I'd sit down. I know you guys have probably heard plenty about this, about press being banned. I thought I'd throw my thoughts out. Personally, I am not a fan of bans, but in this case, I find that their decision was wholly necessary. The card was, as everyone was saying, it's too unbalanced, it was too good, and it needed to take a break. We might see it come back later when it's not as powerful, but this, honestly, it gives Decepticons a more fighting chance instead of just giving them their own version of press or a backwards version or whatever it is. And they had discussed that. I read the article, and while I'm sad that we're not getting a Decepticons version of Press the Advantage, I feel that taking away Press the Advantage from the equation was a good thing. And it's going to open, as you can see, I've got plenty of stuff. It's going to open a whole lot of deck building. You guys probably saw the poll where you're voting on which Megatron you want to see me mech around with. And at the end of the video, I will talk more about that. But I thought at this point I would jump in. With Press being gone, it opens up a lot of slots in a good number of my decks, whether it be my Soundwave deck, which didn't necessarily use all Autobots, but, you know, playing against cons, just taking away 2 defense, that can be a big deal. But there are gaps now in the deck that need to be filled, both in the main and the side, and I thought I'd go over a few of them that I personally am giving a second look. Alright, so let's get started. I figured I'd go through some of the battle cards first, the ones that I'm thinking about now that Press is gone. Obviously, I'm a big aggro player. I'm not very good with blue decks. I do like them, but I'm not as good with them as I am with orange. One of the things that you can talk to anybody at my store, I've always been a huge fan of, and I think I'm going to keep trying it again and again, is Focus Fire. And Focus Fire is one of those cards, you know, I love the extra bold, and there's a lot to be done with this. I like personally going bold. I've always said go bold or go home. And I think that this has a little bit more value to it now. It's fishable like Press was with the green icon. And the nice part is you can more or less dictate when your next supercharge is coming with it, because you only really need them in pairs at most. But you can also run all 3 of them, obviously dropping the bold 6. And it can get crazy. Also, if you have, you know, more than one attack, you could drop, you know, the bold 1 on somebody and then drop the bold 3 on, or well, the bold 2 onto someone else. And it would get crazy real quick, because then you'd have multiple people swinging for slightly bigger, or you could just have one guy swinging real big. I know I tend to ramble, so I apologize. The other one that's been a real big main deck hit with me, and I love it. I run it in most of my aggro decks now. It's not as good without the green icon, but it is Defensive Formation. I'm personally a huge fan of this card, and I feel like with Burn being as good as it is, you know, Zaps, Armed Hovercraft, that 1 damage can really make the difference, and I feel like with Defensive Formation, it gives you just a little bit more stretch for some of your guys. You can keep that extra health on them, and it can sometimes save you from certain death, and that's until we get some of our other cards that we're going to get, like the one that protects characters from getting KO'd, keeps them at 1 HP. But that's neither here nor there at this point. I'm going to worry about Wave 4 once it's here. But as of right now, I'm a big fan of Defensive Formation, and I think it will do well. One of the other ones I've been sleeping on a little bit is Tackle. Now, I side deck it currently in my Soundwave deck, and really I don't use it much. It requires melee, which is fine, but I really only use it if I'm going to face off against Blaster, or heaven forbid another Soundwave deck. That way, after they attack with their Battle Master, I can tap, say, my Lionizer or my Steeljaw, and tap one of their smaller guys. That way I can really dig in and leave their Battle Master to sit idly by himself, and then they're forced to just kind of deal with it. I personally don't want to have to dig into their Battle Master unless I have to, because if I kill it too soon and I don't have a means of getting rid of it, then here I am paddling poo with my hands. The other one that I've made side deck worthy, especially with a lot of orange running around, is Dampening Field. I don't main it because I don't like having so many white pips in my deck. they usually, for me, they come in clumps, and I always find that it's irritating, so I side it. It's a counter for if I run into Metroplex, or if I run into another, if I run into bugs, or if I run into another heavy aggro deck that runs a lot of bold, shuts all that stuff down. Good card, but I couldn't justify putting it in the main deck. Now, with all the with press going away, I feel like cons are going to get kind of a little resurgence. One of the guys that I had talked about with the guys at my store was Starscream, the King Starscream, and I feel that they're right. He could make a big resurgence because without press, he has a lot of potential again. I feel like he had a good showing early on. Now that we have Callous Leadership too, you can run, I don't know, say just about any Battle Master that you want to, if you want to pile on with him. You can go blue, you can go orange. But I think that we might start seeing a little bit more. I mean, him being ranged too gives you access to the ranged package, and that's always good. Another one I'm a big fan of is Megatron. Pretty much any Megatron. I haven't run into, even the starter deck one I think might have its uses here or there, but I haven't tried him yet, so I can't really speak to volumes. But this particular one I've always been a fan of. I've always wanted to come back and redo Arrogant Ruler. Now with Callous Leadership and without press, I feel like he could stretch a little bit further, but we'll see. If you guys were following the poll, Living Weapon won by a landslide. It was crazy. He's going to be in my next blue build, and I personally like him, and I had 3 different versions that I was tooling around with when I was building. I had one that I called Fortify, and what that did is it ran Aimless and it ran Ravage from the Blaster Soundwave, and the idea was to just ingrain that tough into Megatron, as well as try to keep your guys alive. Because he doesn't have relatively big health for his stars. I mean, General Megatron has, what, 15 health for the same amount of stars? Yeah, 15 health. I mean, I can still slap Energy Pack down on him, but, I mean, I feel like his skills just aren't as powerful as other Megatrons we have out there. But the other thing I was going to try was the Double Battle Master, which I called Equip, and it was going to run Aimless and Smashdown. Smashdown given the static +2, but also if you flip more colors than anyone else, so I flip, the white and the green, maybe a black icon too, you could possibly get the extra +2 boost, and ultimately I opted against that, and I went with the mixed package after talking with Jimmy over at the Jank Lab, and I opted for Flame War and Raider Aimless, kind of going down the middle road between Equip and Fortify. Still keep my guys going strong. I can run the ranged package, which is great. I love the fact I'll be able to run armed hovercraft. I'll be able to run marksmanships. And I feel ultimately it'll be... I think it has some potential. It has some potential, and I'm working on the deck list itself now. I have submitted my first round over to Jimmy at Jank Lab and to get some opinions, and me and him have kind of been going back and forth, and I think I have an idea which way to go now that I've had a little bit more outside input. So we'll kind of figure out where that's going to go as that goes. The other thing that I'm sure you've seen the footage for it, I've since touched it up, is Soundwave. I'm a huge fan of this Soundwave because it gives you a little bit of control. It's kind of like almost like having a micro Shockwave deck almost, because you get to flip him, deploy a person, and then you get to peel a card from their hand and put it on top of their deck. One of the big ones I like to do is, oh, you're going to be defending, so I'm going to put that blank pip on top of your deck. Or, you're running cars, You're running cars, I'm going to take that untap and put it on top of your deck. You're not going to get access to it, so say goodbye to your, start your engines or your turbo boosters. I kind of play it by ear. Now, originally it ran Ramhorn, and I didn't like running the force fields. I found that they were largely useless, especially after Ramhorn had already done his thing. They more or less rot in my hand, or I flip too many white pips, especially since I'm running Heat of Battle, and that's because I'm running Frenzy. Now, Frenzy's great with Heat of Battle, especially when I got 2 attacks, because when he attacks, he shuts off Tough for the turn. That really puts blue decks into a pickle, especially if they're running stuff like Flame War and Sparring Gears. And I find with Heat of Battle, it really doesn't hurt me, because it'll give my whole team Supercharge. But since Frenzy's going to go in first and shut off their Tough for the turn, there's really no drawback to it, because they're not going to be flipping those extra cards. Now, I took out Ramhorn and I ran Steeljaw. I found I needed to give Soundwave a little bit more of a boost, and I feel like this does it. He has the bold one for himself. He shares the bold one with Soundwave, and I feel overall it's a stronger play. And instead of Fire Drive like I ran during the last video when I recorded gameplay with Soundwave, I'm running Lionizer, and I personally am a bigger fan of Lionizer in this build because I just really want to dig my heels in. I don't care so much. I don't draw a whole lot, so I don't care about ditching those cards for the static bump. I'd rather pile on as many flips as I can get, and I'm a huge fan of stuff like that, as you'll see, because the one other deck that I'm looking into and messing around with it's going to be our good old boys, the Firecons. Now, I know that there's another one in there, and I'm not as big a fan of him because you got to do a lot of flipping for him for not a lot of pullback. Whereas with these guys, I mean, you only need to flip max 4. 4 does 2 damage to a tapped enemy, and burn damage is always a great thing. And then the other one just lets me draw cards, and I do love drawing me some cards. You give me more cards, and more happy for me. But that's about all I'm gonna get into today. I want to thank y'all for coming out to listen to me again today. You guys are awesome. Thanks for all the support. I will be putting out more content when I get the chance. I'm going to be typing up articles like I normally do and post them on the page, share them to the groups. And you all have a wonderful day and a wonderful week. And remember to make every card hurt.